LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. And the breaking news you may have just heard is that a murder investigation has been launched after a man has been fatally stabbed in Leighton in North Birkbeck Road, E11. It happened at 4:30 this afternoon. There are no suspects yet. Another fatal stabbing, and it follows on from the very sorry tale. Of course, there were two 17-year-olds that were killed over the weekend, one in London, one in Manchester, and also 3 stabbing deaths within days of each other in Birmingham last month. And as a result of that, police in that city have now been granted the power to use stop and search far more effectively. What does that mean? Well, it means that Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994 has effectively been triggered, and it means that police officers have the power to stop and search people for weapons without needing reasonable grounds. They're able to use their discretion and to decide who to stop and who to search. And this perhaps is what led today to the chairwoman of the National Police Chiefs Council, Sarah Thornton, saying this earlier on today.
We've had some restrictions on the use of that power for 4 or 5 years, and we discussed the benefit of removing those, and most of the chiefs were in favour of removing those restrictions so that officers are really confident to use their powers, that they know they've got the support of the Home Secretary and the government in using stop and search.
So she was pretty clear there, Sarah Thornton, and remind you, she's the chairwoman of the National Police Chiefs Council, and she said, we've had some restrictions in place for the last 4 or 5 years. Well, who was the Home Secretary 4 or 5 years ago? Yes, you've guessed it, it was one certain Theresa May, and she's asking really for the government to approve of local police chiefs triggering Article 60 to deal with a crisis that I think goes up every day in the minds of the public. And, year on year, knife crime is growing by about 10 to 15%, but it is compounded year on year on year. I think we're all pretty shocked by it. So let me ask you, do you think that it's fair for the police to have the power under Section 60 to stop and search you without reasonable grounds? And if you think it's the only way to get tough on this horrendous scourge of knife crime, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, actually, it's wrong. It moves us towards a police state. It will lead, I'm afraid, with ethnic communities to yet more bitterness and division between them and the police. Text to 84850. Or maybe you think we're dealing with a symptom and not the cause, and there are deeper social issues that need to be addressed, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course Facebookers, you can comment there too. Look, I'm in no doubt that stop and search, the relaxation of it 4 or 5 years ago by what I think was the worst Home Secretary in history, Theresa May, and probably the worst Prime Minister in history too, was a massive mistake. And this idea that she put out yesterday, that the rise in violent crime had nothing to do with a decrease of 20,000 police on the streets. Well, today, Sky News, with one of their Sky data polls, and these are snapshots of public opinion, but 77% of people in that poll said they thought police funding cuts were a major factor behind a rise in violent crime. And I have to say, I think too. I mean, otherwise, if it wasn't, why have police at all? Why bother? Just let everyone get on with it. It's crazy. But is it reasonable? Is it reasonable to allow the police to have these powers? I think in these circumstances it is. Although, I will say that I'm old enough to remember 1981. Why? Well, I was at school in Dulwich in South London, and just about a mile and a bit down the road was Brixton. And we had the Brixton riots of 81 that were horrible, and it was the use of what were then known as the sus laws by the police that were seen by the West Indian community to be unfair and racist. Whether they were or not is not the point. They were seen to be, and that led directly to the Brixton riots. So I do accept that there are some risks with this. However, I think what the police need to do is make the argument, by doing this, they'll be saving black lives. 80% of those who are killed in these knife crime attacks are actually people from the black community. So I'm saying, absolutely, Sajid Javid, get off the fence, be clear, allow these police chiefs to trigger Section 60, and let's get to grips with this horrendous crisis. I'm going to Taunton to speak to Simon, a new caller to the show. Simon, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
So, is it reasonable for the police to be able to do this, Simon?
Absolutely. I don't know what people think we do, or whether we come equipped with a crystal ball. We don't. Unless you stop and search people, you don't know if they're carrying a weapon. These powers, they don't completely remove reasonable grounds. You have to have reasonable grounds to suspect a group or a collection of people is involved in serious violence.
Well, you say
and
that,
that's what you got here.
Simon, you say that, but let me read you what the Section 60 authorisation under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994 actually says. And it says, police officers will have the power to stop and search people for weapons without needing reasonable grounds. That's what it says. So, in fact...
I know, Nigel, I'm a former police officer.
All right, okay, all right, Simon. So, is it reasonable for the police to be unreasonable, Simon?
Well, yeah, you've got a serious outbreak of violence. No matter what community it's in, the police have got to be given the tools and the equipment to deal with that serious violence. If that means upsetting a couple of liberal snowflakes on the way, then I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
Simon, I don't give a damn if the police upset some liberal snowflakes along the way, or those who are of such a weak disposition they don't want to get a grip on this. But let me tell you what does worry me. I mean, you're there in Taunton. Imagine you were a few miles west of where you are. Let's say the St Paul's district of Bristol.
I know, I used to work in St Paul's.
OK, well, then I've guessed, my goodness gracious me. So, St Paul's, a very big West Indian-originated community. If you were a policeman, Simon, with Section 60 powers, what kind of people would you stop and search?
I'd stop and search those who I suspected that were involved in the gang culture, and believe it or not, they're quite easy to spot. The 99% of the community up there reject themselves the gang culture, and they reject the gangs.
I don't doubt that, Simon, but I'm asking you, if you were back on your old beat in St Paul's with Section 60 powers, would I be right in assessing that most of the people you would stop and search would be black?
Well, yeah, because you're in a predominantly black area.
OK, and would that be perceived by the black community to be you as a police officer doing your best to stop black people being stabbed, or would it be perceived as the police being racist? That's what worries me, Simon.
Do you know what? It would be perceived as the police being racist, and you can't win. You try doing my job, stand in my uniform and do my job, you're always going to upset someone. You're damned if you do, and if you're damned if you don't. So my way of thinking is you do your job as professionally as best as you can with the intelligence that you've got, and if that means stopping black people, that's exactly what it means.
And if it saves lives, to help with...
And it saves lives.
Yep.
That's the primary duty of a police officer, is to protect life and property.
Nope.
That's the business we're in.
Simon, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very interesting. And Simon, who's worked in that St Paul's area of Bristol, which again, back in the 80s and later, did have not quite the same as Brixton, but significant degrees of riots and difficulties. I get on text, well, if the police feel they need it, OK, but in my view, it must be only temporary, i.e. 30 days, and then reviewed so it doesn't go on forever. Well, the answer to that is if it was used for 30 days and worked, then fine. Let's go to Jonathan, who's calling from Watford. Jonathan, is it reasonable for the police to have unreasonable powers?
Interesting way to put it, Nigel, but yes, at the moment it's so terrible, the problem that we've got.
Yes.
I think you give the police within reason whatever they need to do the job. I agree it needs to be reviewed, it shouldn't be permanent. However, as long as it's done respectfully, if I were to be stopped to the street by a police officer and they wanted to search me, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. Why? Because I've done nothing wrong, I haven't got anything on me that I shouldn't have, and therefore they'll say thank you very much and I'll go on my way. I think it's time that we took a real hold of what's going on. Every single day almost. And to be honest, Nigel, the thing that got me calling you, I don't know if you saw the front page of the Daily Mail today.
I did.
That little
I did laughing
giggling and smiling and doing a selfie. The second time he's been in there.
And this was the point, Jonathan, this was the point we raised last night in the debate, that only 1 in 3 of those who were stopped for knife offences get any form of custodial sentence whatsoever.
Well, that in itself is ridiculous. But that's his second time. And drugs, and he comes out of court. What does he do? He's smiling, laughing, taking a selfie, sending a note to his mate saying, look, it's the second time I've been to court and they didn't put me in prison.
Yeah.
We need to do something drastic, Nigel, and if stop and search is what's needed, then so be it.
Well, Jonathan, I'm with you on that. And the line's just gone click, and you've disappeared, which means I can nip down to Hailsham and speak to John. Good evening, John.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel. I would just like to say what a terrible, shocking mess our country's now in. It's almost on a daily basis now we're hearing of fatal stabbings taking place. And personally, I wouldn't care if the police ever want to stop and search me, because they're never going to find me carrying a knife. And the only people that would have an objection to that are the people who are liable to be carrying knives. So that would certainly be my opinion on the matter.
Why, John, do you think that Theresa May, as Home Secretary, and we heard it very, very clearly spoken by the chairwoman of the National Police Chiefs Council, Sarah Thornton, why 4 or 5 years ago did she make it so much more difficult for the police to use stop and search? What was her motive, John? Because I just don't get it.
It's always the same old story, Nigel. If people are frightened of being called racist, obviously we've got to look at the logic of where we are. Most of this crime is being perpetrated by young black men, and I think it's absolutely terrible. It really is, and we have to look at the facts.
Not just the crime, John, but the victims too, and that's a really important point. And she's been too PC. I thank you. And Dennis quite rightly says we don't moan when we're searched by airport security. Well, actually, Dennis, we do a bit, but hey, we accept it. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:15, and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
A man believed to be in his 20s has been stabbed to death in Leighton in East London this afternoon. The Home Secretary is calling for knife crime to be treated like a disease after meeting police chiefs from 7 forces most affected by high levels of violence. A father's been jailed for 16 years for planning an acid attack on his 3-year-old son in Worcester last summer. LBC Weather: rain persisting across northern England and Scotland through tonight, clearer elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Knight, and the M1 is solid out of town from just after the London Gateway services towards Junction 5 because of an accident on the roundabout just off the motorway. A serious accident in Stanmore earlier has shut the A5 Brockley Hill at Canons Corner near the golf club. They're still doing investigations there. And there are long delays around Enfield town centre with an accident blocking Enfield Road at Bincote Road. Now, vehicles hit the railway bridge at Chislehurst train station, so Bickley Park Road is closed both ways there. South Eastern services are warning of delays through the area. There are 20-minute delays on Southern from Balam to Streatham Common and 20-minute delays on London Northwestern from Watford Junction to Milton Keynes Central.
This is LBC.
I pledge to leave a gift in my will because the money that is raised will help research, and without research we cannot beat cancer. That is my pledge.
Cancer's always been there and it's a fight we need to fight.
1 in 2 people will develop cancer at some point in their lifetime. What we want to do with the research is to develop those new therapies, develop those new treatments, and then those people can then become cancer-free. Even within the last 5 or 10 years, we've made incredible leaps forward.
Join the supporters and researchers pledging to beat cancer with Cancer Research UK. Find out how you can make a pledge to leave a gift in your will at cruk.org/pledge. Together, we will beat cancer.
Go compare! Their unbiased information could save billions across the nation. Proudly independent, free and fair.
Oh, I found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
Buying workshop delights and travelling to meetings off-site. The client wants lobster for tea and then there's a conference across the sea. Fancy client biscuits, last-minute train tickets, light bulbs, booking flights, meeting snacks, black cabs. You do the maths. Say hello to Soldo. All expenses paid. Prepaid business expense cards for you and your team, so no one has to spend their own money at work. And Soldo connects seamlessly with Xero. A win-win for you and your business. Find out more at soldo.com.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
If you're a frequent traveller in premium, business and first class, is your travel agent charging you too much? Switching to Bright Sun Travel's 24/7 tailor-made travel services means you could pay less on flights and hotels and enjoy free benefits like early and late checkout, room upgrades and hotel credits. Conditions apply. Visit brightsun.co.uk. Atoll Protect.
Never seen the point of paying loads for a trendy coffee when I could just make myself a big mug of instant. And I won't buy fancy bottled water when I've got a perfectly good tap. So why? Why would I want to pay more on my broadband for bundles of stuff I'll never use or loads of extras I don't need? When between us, I'm really all about the funny cat videos. Brilliant.
Just
give me great value broadband.
Office. Post Office. Here for your broadband.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
The West Midlands Police Force have put in place a Section 60, which means their police officers can now go out there and use stop and search without reasonable grounds. And that follows 3 stabbing deaths in Birmingham in the space of the same number of days. The question is, should this happen nationally? Now, Craig thinks on Facebook that it's time for the police to carry guns, as there's no respect for the police now in some big cities. Craig, not sure that guns stop people carrying knives. It might stop people carrying guns, I don't know. Craig, I absolutely feel the police must be armed. I felt that for a very, very long time. I think we're way behind the curve. Remember, and it's a different issue, but remember the terrorist attack that happened on London Bridge. That brave police officer who finished up getting stabbed in the eye and blinded in one eye, going up to 3 terrorists carrying a baton. I mean, had the guy had a gun, it would have been done and dusted. Had he had a taser, he'd have stopped them going into Borough Market. So I'm with you, but this is a slightly different question. Jason says on Facebook, I totally agree. If you've got nothing to hide, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. Dee says the same by text. She says, we want to know the police are keeping us safe. And if we're innocent, why would we worry? Brendan in Norwich. Why would you worry, Brendan, if you were stopped and searched in central Norwich?
Well, I wouldn't. And I never have been. And that's not because, I'm a white male, because I grew up in Hackney, in central London.
Yeah.
And I was, about 6-7 years ago now, I was in my 18, 19, late teens, and I was actually stopped and searched more times than I could actually recall. And on particular, my 18th birthday, me and a group of friends were stopped 3 times on the same night.
Wow.
Once by the City of London Police and twice by the Metropolitan Police. And by the 3rd time we were stopped, we pulled out the pink slips that the police gave us to show that they'd stopped and searched us, filled out the paperwork, gave it to us. Basically, to the last group of the police officers, look, we've actually already been stopped twice tonight. This is kind of a little bit crazy now. And they literally just went, OK, let's have a look. They just went, all right, just give our legs a quick frisk, check your socks, check your pockets, no problem, lads. Off they went. And what was that? Now, one of my friends was of Jamaican descent. One of my friends was Greek. I am white, blonde hair, blue eyes, as white as the white look comes. I had another friend who was of Pakistani descent. So you had every single race, creed and colour almost there. Now, there's too much emphasis going on with the police can't do this because it's a case of racial profiling. Unfortunately, if you have areas like Hackney, for instance, which have a majority to the black community or other areas that don't, then the likelihood is the nature of the job is going to be they're going to be looking at people, and it's not necessarily going to be based off racial profiling per se. It's going to be stereotypical profiling, because you're not going to go out for an evening looking to stop and search somebody for knife crime who's wearing a 3-piece suit and polished shoes. You're just not going to do it. You're going to look for the group of hoodies standing around on the corner, whether they be white, black or brown.
So, Brendan,
it makes absolutely no difference.
On the night,
nothing to hide.
On the night,
you shouldn't be fearful.
On the night you were stopped 3 times, albeit by 2 different police forces, and it was your 18th birthday. Is it possible you were somewhat rowdy?
No, the thing is, we weren't in any way. And honestly, like, as you know, I'm in my mid-20s now. Looking back, I could probably say, yeah, I could probably understand why they stopped us. But to be totally honest, you know, like, you know, I've never had any problem with the police, never been in trouble with the law.
And did you object to it, Brendan?
Back now,
did you feel a bit victimised that night as a group of young fellas out for an evening?
Well, as a group, yes, we did. But at the same time, logically, all of us looked at the situation and kind of, as much as it was frustrating, we just kind of accepted the fact that was what the police were doing. And unfortunately, now they're not being allowed to do
isn't it
this.
funny? Isn't it funny? Because you said this was 6-7 years ago, and it was 4 or 5 years ago that brilliant Home Secretary Theresa May decided that sort of thing shouldn't happen. Brendan, on balance, you've been through it. You've been ever so slightly victimised on your 18th birthday when you say you weren't rowdy, and I'm trying to believe you. On balance, given what's happening, and I keep saying this, I've said it month after month here on LBC, it's not just London, given the growing use of knives and in some parts of the UK guns, do the police need more powers of stop and search again?
Yeah, they do. They need more powers, they need more backup, and they need more numbers. And to be totally honest, if they even suspect somebody of being in possession of a weapon, to have any kind of intelligence, not just even a genuine stop and search, but maybe, you know, looking for somebody, even if they don't have a weapon on them at the time, they should be allowed to detain them under suspicion, most definitely.
Brendan, great call. Fascinating experience. Thank you very much indeed. James in Harrow says to me, Nigel, I am a black male. It is so tiresome when callers and police complain about the loss of stop and search powers. It was proven beyond doubt that the police were institutionally racist and that the police abused the stop and search laws. That was why the powers were curtailed. That said, I support stop and search when done correctly. Well, James, I think whatever the police do here, you know, they've got a real problem. But James, I would just retort by saying that if powers of stop and search remove knives from our streets, it is predominantly black lives that would be saved. And there is a code of conduct. I mean, Article 60, whilst it says you don't have to actually, you haven't got to have a direct reason, but it does actually say that, you know, the police should only use it where necessary. There should be a limit of time authorisation. There is a code of conduct to this. Once people are stopped. Interestingly, the police don't have to wear webcams, and I can see the next stage of this debate will be that if they're going to use stop and search, they'll have to wear webcams. I can see that's where we're going. David on Facebook says, what is the point of the police if they can't stop and search people at their will? Donald says, on the issue of police routinely carrying guns, do we want to end up like the USA? No, Donald, but it's not just the police that carry guns in the USA. Everybody carries guns in the USA. In some states, like Ohio, it's open carry. It's a very, very different culture. Christine's back on this question of the police being armed. They should definitely be armed. They work with no tools. Richard from Catford, do you think it's reasonable for the police to have the powers to be unreasonable?
I think it's only reasonable when it's reasonable. It cannot be reasonable when it's unreasonable. That's the oxymoron there, Nigel.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to work through it, Richard. But I mean,
but look, I've experienced this when the police have constantly stopped me in Peckham, even though they knew that I was in a. They had a tinted car, and they would always stop me because they said that, Richard, we know you, but we just want to know who's in your car. I told them, look, I'm a family man. I don't have any criminal association. Look, if they use it correctly, I am all for it. But it has been proven that the police took the Michaels out of black people by using that particular legislation. Now, if you're why would you limit the use of a legislation? That don't make sense.
So Richard, how do we get the balance of this right? Because I'm absolutely certain that Theresa May made a catastrophic mistake in limiting the police's ability to stop and search 4 to 5 years ago. And yet, I am conscious, and I mentioned earlier, sus laws, the Brixton riots, all those years ago. How do we get this balance right, Richard?
It's a criminal act. It's not a black problem, because I walk in any street. I walk in Brixton, Peckham, East London. My life is not at risk. This is a criminal problem instead of a black problem. So when you make it a black problem, I have an issue with that, because We have a problem with deaths in this country, whether it will be abduction, whether it be students going missing. For the past couple of months, we've had so many students gone missing. Have we set up a task force to deal with white-on-white crime in terms of people going missing? No, Nigel.
No, Richard, because we're unclear about much of it, and often they're missing persons or people who've gone to another country or whatever. The point I would make to you, Richard, is of the people that have been killed, 80% are from the ethnic minorities. It's the victims that are predominantly black too.
Go after the criminals, Nigel. Go after the criminals. Stop making it a black issue. Go after the criminals.
Okay, Richard, I tell you what. Just listen, bear with me a minute. Let's listen to what Cressida Dick, the Met Chief, said yesterday about this.
There is a much higher involvement in gang activity, and it's not just the police that would say this, children's services would say it, sadly, from boys of African and Caribbean origin than others.
And why?
There is a real issue about people growing up in an area where they are exposed to influences of their older brothers, their uncles, their whoever, and not, of course, exclusively African Caribbean, but in that area, an awful lot of people who are involved in crime or have been involved in crime and are encouraging others to get involved in crime.
Richard, is she wrong?
She's not wrong. There's a big element of truth here, but also, this is a person that gave authority for the Brazilian guy to be killed in Stockwell. Whatever she says, I take it with a big pinch of salt. Okay?
Yeah,
she has been inappropriate.
Demenz, his name was.
She shouldn't be in that position.
Yeah, and it was.
She shouldn't be in that position.
And it was. I tell you what, Richard, I think we're going to finish up on a point of agreement, all right? Listen, thank you, and huge passion there from Richard. See, he's not against stop and search. He just feels it was misused a few years ago, and he's worried it will be again. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:31 and time for the news. with Lisa Aziz.
A murder investigation started after a man was stabbed to death in East London this afternoon. The victim, believed to be aged in his 20s, died at the scene in Leighton just after 5 o'clock. There have been no arrests. The Home Secretary, Sajid Javid's called for knife crime to be treated like a disease after meeting police chiefs from 7 forces most affected by high levels of violence. While Labour has written to Theresa May calling for 10,000 new officers to help tackle the problem. A man has been jailed for 16 years for plotting an acid attack on his 3-year-old son in Worcester last July. The father and 5 other men were found guilty of conspiring to throw sulphuric acid with intent to burn, maim or disfigure the boy inside a busy store. LBC weather, rain persisting across Scotland through tonight with showers too for Northern Ireland, North Wales and Northern England. Clearer elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
2 men say they were abused hundreds of times by Michael Jackson from the ages of 7 to 10. Taj Jackson, Michael was his uncle. What do you make of these allegations?
It's hard to hear. It's painful to hear.
Is that the uncle you recognise?
No, that's not the uncle I recognise.
You have a newborn, right?
Little girl.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you can look me in the eye from one dad to another
Yes.
and swear on your daughter's life that your uncle was not a paedophile.
100%.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
It's Flavour of the Alps week at Lidl, so we've partnered with Jet2 City Breaks to give you the chance to win a city break for 2 to Salzburg. So your shopping trip might go from this to this. Lidl. Big on quality, little on price. See lidl.co.uk/Jet2 holidays for details. T's and C's apply.
I had been to another dentist and had long conversations about bone grafting.
At Darwood & Tanner, our experience with dental implants often means bone grafting is not necessary.
When I met Andrew and he looked at the various x-rays, he said, you do not need to have bone grafts. He can work around places where there is no bone or there is little bone.
Download your information pack at darwoodandtanner.co.uk today. Your smile is our healthy obsession.
I know who designed Princess Di's wedding dress. I know who phoned home. I know how to do a silly walk. And I know which part of the room you should never put baby in. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
Your company's doing pretty well. Your tax position's okay.
So, what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
You're on a roll, and life keeps rolling with you. You're rushing, you're moving, you're grooving, you're running late, you're gymming, you're swimming, you're meditating. And you're walking, you're talking, you're working, not working, and texting, you're simply unstoppable. And unstoppable shouldn't have to stop to enjoy great food. With Uber Eats, you could order food from your favourite restaurants and have it delivered right to your doorstep. Uber Eats. Get food delivered wherever life takes you. Download the app today. Available at selected times in selected locations.
Do you need an alternative to your bank to secure finance? Well, Finance for Business are the brokers who can help you access it, allowing you to expand your property portfolio, to buy properties in need of refurbishment or development, or downsize and buy the dream home before your old house sells. Broking is the new banking, and Finance for Business are the brokers you can rely on. Search Finance for Business for details. Your home may be at risk of repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on a mortgage or any other loan secured on it.
Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor.
Oh.
With a
Stethoscope.
Stethoscope, yes, and a big black bag.
You'll have to work very hard at school.
At medical school.
Yeah.
Before a fixed-term specialty training appointment in clinical neurophysiology.
Okay.
The
Better get saving.
Office. Post Office. Here for your savings. Post Office savings are provided by Bank of Ireland UK or One Family.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
After 3 fatal stabbings in 3 days, the West Midlands Police Force have put in place Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994, and that means they can stop and search people without having reasonable grounds. And I'm asking, is that a reasonable thing to do, given the crisis that we face? Michael from Enfield says, forget Section 60, Nigel. Just put back the 20,000 missing police officers, thanks to Mrs May. You know, Michael, all roads with this do lead back to Mrs May. Chris takes the view, it's more than reasonable. A person's life is of more value than a minute or two of discomfort, and they should use body cams to record the... I mentioned that point earlier, and I do think that is where we will have to finish up with this. Sarah is new to this show and is calling from Greenwich. Good evening, Sarah.
Oh, hello, Nigel. So basically, I'm a black professional, black British professional.
Yeah.
I've lived and worked in an affluent area of West London for over 10 years. And the stop and search laws need to be relaxed so the police can start searching people who don't look traditionally suspicious. These are the millennial professionals, the bankers, the lawyers and the techies of London who are using illegal drugs day in, day out in London. If you go to any exclusive club or festival, you'll see these people using drugs in masses out in the open. They carry and they buy in large amounts and they're never worried about getting stopped. They know, well, I'm in a suit, I work in St Paul's or Green Park, I'm not going to get stopped by police. And I think the increasing use of illegal drugs is what's fueling this knife crime. And unfortunately, it seems that the ethnic minorities are the ones who are selling drugs, and it's all gang-related knife crime.
Sarah, I don't disagree with you for one moment. I think I was going to say casual use of Class A drugs like cocaine, but actually, from what I can see in London of an under-40s age group, it's habitual use. Habitual use on a scale that many people can't even comprehend. So I'm with you on that. Trouble is that when people buy those drugs to use them, Sarah, they use them within minutes of buying them. So it's very difficult. You know, if the police were to stop people going into Canary Wharf, they'd find hardly anybody with any drugs on them. They'd be wasting their time. So we do get back to the dealers, Sarah, really, don't we?
I completely disagree with you because people use these drugs when they go out. So when they're walking around to their destination, they are carrying the drugs to use it there. So if people were a bit more afraid that if they were outside of their house with these items, then maybe it would reduce the use.
Well, the club use of...
And it would reduce the buying.
Well, maybe it would, Sarah, but my argument still stands that most people who use these drugs, people who buy them at a music festival, buy them and use them 5 minutes later. You know, in terms of police resources and time, the argument I'm making, Sarah, is if the police are going to stop and search people, they've got to have a reasonable ratio of success. And arresting people in the City of London or Canary Wharf or the West End isn't going to lead... I mean, look, they could raid the festivals, but again, it'd be the dealers they were after, wouldn't it?
So do you think these people should get away with fueling this crime and there should be no consequences for the more affluent people who have the resources to get a good job, go to a good university? Do you think they should be above the law?
Sarah, I'm not disagreeing with the morality of the argument that you're putting forward. I'm just countering it with a practicality. I mean, let's just say, Sarah, that the police suspect that in a posh house in Fulham there is a party going on where large amounts of cocaine are being used because they saw somebody pop round the back of the local pub 100 yards down the road 5 minutes ago. If the police break down the door and they find 8 middle-class people taking drugs, what should happen to them, Sarah, in your view?
Well, I think they should all be arrested.
And then what?
They should be prosecuted.
And what would that mean? A non-custodial sentence and a fine of 150 quid?
Well, I think the law needs to be changed, doesn't it?
Well, I'm asking you what you think. I mean, are you suggesting big financial penalties? I mean, what is it you're talking about the demand side of this equation, all right? And without the demand side, there aren't the problems with the supply side. And I'm with you on that. I'm just asking practically, what can we do to stifle demand?
Yeah, to be honest, that's a good idea. So maybe a big financial penalty or something, because hitting people hard where it hurts the money, that would maybe have some effect on people feeling that it's completely okay for this sort of habitual, casual use of these Class A drugs, because it's what's fueling the knife crime and the gang crime. It's the demand that is fueling it.
Sarah, there is nothing you've said that I disagree with at all. It's just a question of practical use of police resources, and thank you for the call. And Glenn following up on this on Facebook says drug testing for all businesses should be made. Well, Glenn, in many cases it already is, actually. You know, many people in many companies, they do these routine drug tests. Doesn't seem to make an awful lot of difference somehow. Sonny is a new caller from Limehouse. Good evening.
Nigel, good evening. Nice to speak with you.
Good to speak with you. So, I mean, you know, you're living in a part of East London, and you've had, knife deaths not very far away from you in the last few weeks. Do the police need more power, Sonny?
Not only I would say they need more powers, they should never have been put into a straitjacket in the past. It's a decision that has come a bit late, but it's a welcome decision. Not just West Midlands. I would expect that to be done throughout the country, and the police should be given more resources if they need be. I believe in the police force as an institution. I think they need respect. They deserve respect. They're working for us. And I'm speaking this as a man of color, okay? I got brown skin. If I'm stopped, I have absolutely no problems because they're doing it for the right reason, and every life saved is a bonus.
Well, I think this is what Sarah Thornton, who's the chairwoman of the National Police Chiefs Council, was really arguing today with Sajid Javid, is it shouldn't just be the West Midlands, it needs to be everywhere. The police need to have these powers. And you, Sonny, and you describe yourself as a person of colour, so you'd have no objection to being stopped in Limehouse tonight at all?
Absolutely no problems. No problems.
Why, Sonny, when we discuss this, do I get callers and texters and tweeters from the black community who think the police use this to victimise black people?
I don't have an answer to that. I'm sharing with you my personal opinion.
No, fine.
And I think what they will react is if some person of their family were to die of a stabbing, they will change their mind.
No, you're probably
and
right.
I don't want to wait for that moment to arrive to my family.
No, Sonny, you made your point beautifully. Thank you very much indeed. I'm down to Tooting. First-time caller Rizwan is on the line. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. I listen to your show Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I don't agree with you 80% of the time, but I do respect you. You do have that charismatic personality.
Well, Rizwan, this show at LBC, it's all about fair, open, reasonable, democratic debate, and thank you for what you just said.
Great. Okay, I'm an Asian, as you can tell from my accent. I've been stopped a couple of times by the police. First time was when I was coming out of the university. They stopped me and did all the search. And once they were done with that, they gave me a paper and there was a number written on it. And they said, if you reckon you've been treated badly, you can call to this number. But I said to them, no, that's fine. That's your duty. That's okay. Second time, I was with my wife. She's white British. But that time we were on our first date and police stopped me as well that night as well. At the beginning, my wife started to get a bit irritated, but then I said, listen, I don't have anything to hide. I'm not carrying anything. You should stop and let them do their work, okay? So they did, and that's fine, absolutely fine.
When was this, Rizwan? Rizwan, when was this?
Okay, the very first search was that was 2013, and the second one was when I was with my wife, 2014.
So that's just before Theresa May, or just around about the time Theresa May changed things. Yeah,
around about that time. Yeah. And one thing more, like it's not written on my face or anyone's face that whether I'm carrying a knife or a weapon or anything. So if they would stop me, why would I be offended if I haven't done anything wrong or I haven't?
Did you feel, Rizwan? Did you feel the act of the police stopping you, and of course there was, you were carrying nothing. Did you feel the fact they were doing that actually made those streets a little bit safer?
Absolutely, 100% backing them.
And isn't that the point? Yeah.
I will not be offended, and I will beg all the people of colour, my community, Asian community, black, and everyone, please don't make it a colour or race issue. Let the police do their job, because otherwise, seriously, I actually came from Pakistan, but it's so scary that me and my wife thinking to go back to live there.
Goodness me.
Right?
Rizwan, honestly, I think you are the call of the day, if not the call of the week. I love what you've just said. You've said it with great passion. You've told your story. And you've given a message to everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:47 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
A man believed to be aged in his 20s has been stabbed to death in Leighton in East London this afternoon. The Prime Minister says she'll be holding a special summit with ministers and community leaders in the coming days to work out how to tackle knife crime. A Muslim convert from Kent has been jailed for at least 15 years for planning a terror attack on London's Oxford Street. LBC Weather, rain persisting across northern England and Scotland through tonight, clearer elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm J-Louise Knight, and the M1 is solid out of town this evening from just after the London Gateway services towards Junction 5. It's all after an accident on the roundabout just off the motorway. Just looking at the cameras, the car involves now on the back of a recovery truck, so it should be clear soon, but it's still very, very heavy. A serious accident in Stanmore has shut the A5 Brockley Hill at Canons Corner for investigations, and there are long delays still around Enfield town centre because of an accident shutting Enfield Road at Bingcote Road. Things have improved in Chislehurst though. Bickley Park Road's reopened after a car hit the railway bridge. Trains through the area are getting back to normal as well. Elsewhere on the trains, there are signalling problems causing 20-minute delays on Southern from Balam to Streatham Common, and there are 20-minute delays from Watford Junction to Milton Keynes Central on London Northwestern.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Two party leaders on cross-question tonight from Renew and the Brexit Party, plus Skills Minister Anne Milton, who'll also be staying on for our apprenticeships phone-in at 9.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Life is full of so many things. Happy things, sad things, and surprising things. You've got commuting things, typing things, planning things. With all these things, it's easy to forget you need to eat something. So open the Uber Eats app to order a sushi thing, a burger thing, or perhaps that new thing. Sit for a minute and enjoy that thing, and then get back to all your other things. Uber Eats. Get food delivered wherever life takes you. Download the app today. Available at selected times in selected locations.
When it comes to business meetings, some things never change. Like the crumbling realization that you were too busy scoffing custard creams to take any notes, and now you haven't a dunking clue what to do next. But some things do change, like having a brand new web tool that lets you record the minutes rather than write them. Dunk away, my custard commando. You've got this. Pow Wow Now, a new kind of web meeting. Join free today.
I'm making this Vonage phone system my business. Let's go through it again.
I'll have it set up for you in a few hours.
At 11:14 exactly. Seamlessly flip your call from your desk phone to your mobile.
14:23. Pop up Mr. Brown's Salesforce data when he calls.
16:05. Simultaneously video call you and Mr. White.
Okay, let's do this.
Make Vonage part of your entourage. A business-ready phone system from just £9 a month. To find out more, go to vonage.co.uk. Terms apply.
Vonage. Sounds like good business to me.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing, or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Isn't it reassuring to know that when you're looking to remortgage, you don't have to rejig your routine? That's why at Barclays we offer evening and weekend appointments. It means you get to talk to us when it works best for you. Morning or evening. We're refreshing and reshaping the way we do mortgages to make them easier. Search Barclays Mortgages. Let's go forward. T's and C's apply.
Looking for your perfect kitchen? Visit roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Block management? It's a doddle, isn't it? I mean, once you've got budget approval, all you need to do is your service charge invoices,
health and safety regulations paperwork, do the cleaning, the gardening, general maintenance, sort out site inspections, arrange contracts, insurance, emergency representation.
Yes, block management. Such a doddle.
Save time and money and cut down on the stress. For complete block management solutions, just call ABC Estates. ABC will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry.
For complete block management solutions, see abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
Buying workshop delights and travelling to meetings off-site. The client wants lobster for tea and then there's a conference across the sea. Fancy client biscuits, last-minute train tickets, light bulbs, booking flights, meeting snacks, black cabs. You do the maths. Say hello to Soldo. All expenses paid. Prepaid business expense cards for you and your team, so no one has to spend their own money at work. And Soldo connects seamlessly with Xero. A win-win for you and your business. Find out more at soldo.com.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, so far, your reaction tonight is that Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act ought to be brought in across the country. The police should be able to stop and search, without actually having necessarily reasonable grounds. Coming through, though, very commonly, and Kirsty says it, is they need to be polite, professional, and it's got to be recorded. And person after person saying they've got to wear webcams, there's got to be a record of what they do. And some very concerned parents. I mean, Mark says to me on Facebook, I don't care what it takes if that's what makes my children safer on the streets. And I think a lot of us, Mark, who've got young kids that go out on a Saturday night, are concerned about this. Owen says, if I was stopped and searched, I'd be surprised. It won't happen to me where I live, but better to be upset or slightly embarrassed than dead. Overwhelming support from you for the police to have powers of stop and search, but some reservations from the black community that the police won't do it properly. Michael is a new caller from Hatfield. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. So, most of my callers, Michael, think stop and search is a great idea and the police should not need reasonable grounds. How do you view it?
Well, it's a great idea in theory, but I grew up in South London and I was one of those black boys that used to be stopped and searched on many occasions, right? And as a 16-year-old, being stopped by policemen was not a very nice experience. And for the first few years of my life, I actually had quite a negative view of the police, right? And I mean, and then what happened? I then hit 20s and stuff like that. I moved out of South London. No, I was still connected to South London, went to university, blah, 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 got a good job, had a nice car, and then I clashed with police again because there was more stop and searches. Along with the stop and searches, at times there was racial abuse and disrespect.
What age are you, Michael? Michael, what age are you?
I'm 37 now. So the thing is now, I don't mind being stopped and searched because I'm a grown man. I know how to carry myself. I know that if police stop me, they know that I'm an intelligent black man. I know how to communicate with them and whatnot. But as a 17, 18-year-old, I was a very different person.
Michael, let me ask you something. You know, and your call illustrates, you know, the negative argument that we've heard, that there are elements of the black community that see powers like stop and search being used in a discriminatory way. And I even mentioned, Michael, earlier on, the Brixton riots of 1981, where the sus laws, which was an earlier version of this, were at the heart of a dispute. Michael, had the group of officers that had stopped you wherever you were in South London all been black, would you have had less of a problem with them?
You know what? I actually think that if I ever got stopped by a black police officer and they were with a white police officer, I actually got harsher treatment because the black police officer was trying to go out of his way to show that he was not being biased towards me. So that actually,
Michael, you're losing me a bit here, Michael. Michael, the police, you know, when we've got, no, Michael, hang on a second. When we've got 300 people stabbed to death last year in England and Wales, and by the looks of it this year, we're headed back for the same number. What do you think? I tell you what, let me ask you, what should the police do?
How did I lose you? I mean, I just told you my experience of being stopped by a black police officer and a white police officer together, and you said that I lost you, but I don't see how I lost you. I'm giving you my experience.
No. Michael, but I'm saying to you, I'm asking you, if it was a black police officer, would you be happier? You were even less happy, it seemed, particularly if he was showing off to a wider. But Michael, we have a growing knife crime epidemic in parts of London and our major cities. What on earth are the police to do?
It is a problem, right? But as I keep emphasising, right, it's not just a black problem, because this is how it gets packaged up, and you get a few skewed stats that show that it's a black problem, but it's actually a young problem. It's actually a young.
Yes, it's a young problem, Michael. But 80% of those that were murdered last year in London by knives came from the ethnic minorities. They need protecting too, don't they?
Yes, they do need protecting, right? But the thing is, right, I am worried, right, because anytime power is given, it's abused, right? And in this case, it would not be middle-aged white men that would be getting abused, you know, by these powers. It will be young black men.
So
a lot of you. Okay,
Michael, let me ask you: Are you suggesting that the police should not have the powers of stop and search?
No. I just think that more intelligence work needs to be done, more community work. All of these things, right? We have many people from the black community and from the community, from all these different communities, putting forward all these things, right? But the government don't think that it's important, right? And what you have all these newspapers that are basically sensationalizing, these deaths, right? Which is very sad, but it's been going on for a long time.
Michael, they're also sensationalising the fact that people who are caught committing knife crimes don't go to prison. That must be wrong too, mustn't it?
I saw that in the paper this morning. But the thing is, people have been getting off for the longest time. It just so happens that we're at a sensitive time. But the thing is, right, it's a very difficult thing. And every time I see the newspapers and I see young people losing their lives, it's very sad. And we're all trying to think about how we
Michael, we are, and you and I have had a good debate about it, and you're really worried what it'll do for race relations. I'm even more worried if the police don't do it. Matt from Sidcup says, we need to legalise drugs, Nigel. Well, legalising drugs, taking it out of the hands of the criminals, would that perhaps lead to less of the criminality and fewer people committing knife crime? We'll come back to this another time, because this issue is not going away. I'm back tomorrow at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Thomas Warbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Well, at 8, it's